Hi, Darren. How are you?
Hey, Ali, how are you? Good to see you.
Yeah, great to see you. Welcome to our Pharmacy Entrepreneur TV.
My God, I never thought I'd be on the Pharmacy Entrepreneur TV podcast. What a great honor.
Well, we're so excited to have you here. We know that you're an ex-pharmacist and you worked in the pharmacy industry and you have wealth of knowledge in pharmacy as well as now in social media, marketing strategy,
That's right.
podcasts, and so on. So we can't wait to learn more about these skills from you. So
Fantastic. Fantastic. You're going to make me go delving into my journey, I can see.
yes, yes, we're looking forward to it. Well, we know that you're passionate about social media, digital media.
Yes,
You're a strategist. You're also a podcaster. You have your own podcast.
I do.
Um, and also you're a podcast coach.
Yes.
You're also a photographer
Yep,
and also photography tutor as well.
that's right. I like to do
Wow,
lots of different things.
very
I
interesting.
get bored.
So tell us, how did you start all this? I want to hear your pharmacy journey.
Yeah.
How did you start it all?
So I started studying pharmacy in 1990. Wow, back in the day, and I studied pharmacy at Sydney University. Was the only place where you could study pharmacy, and it probably still is, I think, is it? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I studied pharmacy. Then I went to practice pharmacy, and I practiced for about 4 or 5 years in a number of different pharmacies. I worked in Bondi Beach in a very, very famous pharmacy. I worked in East Gardens. I did a bit of work at the University of New South Wales pharmacy. I did a bit of work in a Rockdale pharmacy, and I did a bit of kind of locuming and that kind of work as well at some point, or part-time in a few different places. And I had a good time as a pharmacist. I met a lot of great people. I was always fascinated by science and the sciences and the chemistry and the physiology and the pharmacology of everything, and I still am. But I think over the time, 4 or 5 years, I started to realize that maybe it wasn't going to be something that I am going to do for the rest of my life. And I was like, at times it does get very stressful. And I know we've chatted about, the stressful lives of pharmacists on another podcast. So it can get very stressful. And, I would spend a lot of my time in the dispensary doing what you have to do as a pharmacist, multitasking. And I was really craving getting out, talking to people, interacting with people. So I used to spend whatever time I had free, not doing anything. I was walking around the pharmacy, down at Bondi Beach. I had my white coat on, and I was kind of peeking out on the promenade, chatting to people that I knew as I walked by. I was very social. And then every time a script came in, I had to run back to the other side of to go and fill out a script. So I think, I realized early on that maybe that wasn't going to be for me forever, even though I had a great time and I learned a lot, and I still am very interested in the field right now. But then at a certain point, I decided, look, I don't think it's going to be for me, and I'm going to start making a transition to other things. And the logical progression was, okay, maybe I can go and work for a pharmaceutical company as a sales rep. So I was very lucky to get a job as a sales rep for Merck Sharp and Dohme. And they gave me my first taste of the corporate world. They trained me as a salesperson. I had two very fantastic salespeople. I think I still remember their names, Fiona and Pete. They were fantastic sales coaches, and they trained us how to sell to doctors and sell to pharmacists. And so I repped two very, very famous products, Zocor and Renatec, for blood pressure and for cholesterol. And I did repping. I had my country territories, and I did that for a few years. And then I fell into work as a recruiter, an IT recruiter, actually. And so I've kind of been recruiting for many, many years, and I still recruit now. But at the same time as that, 6-7 years ago, I started to really develop a passion for photography. It was a kind of something that I did at school, and I started revisiting it, and it became an obsession. And I built a bit of a photography business, doing a lot of headshots, corporate events, private events, and that kind of thing. And through that time, probably in the last 2 years, I've been photographing for about 7-8 years, but in the last 2 years, the world changed, attention's changed, marketing has changed. And I realized how important it was to jump on social media and podcasting to really market my business, my photography business. And, I did a lot of research. I was following a lot of very famous people like Gary Vee.
Oh, yeah.
And I did a lot of, listened to a lot of audio, what do you call them? Audiobooks. And I just dived heavily and deeper into social media. And it gave me such great results and return that I just realized this is what I'm going to do. And I'm going to actually work to kind of coach other people to do the same thing and go on the same journey that I've been in the last so many years, while still, of course, photographing. But my passion is marketing. I really realized that I love marketing. And so I've kind of done lots of different things, and it's taken me to this point where I do a lot of work as a social media coach and consultant, a podcast coach and consultant. I have my own podcast, as well as photographing a lot as well.
Wow.
So a hell of a journey. And I usually confuse people when I tell them, they say, what? I don't get it.
Okay, well, let's go one by one. Let's start with, you're passionate about marketing. Tell us, what is marketing? And you've gone through sales role as well. So what's the difference between marketing and sales?
Oh, that's a very good question, Ali. That's a fantastic question. I mean, I'm very passionate about psychology and human interaction. So I'm very passionate about sales and marketing, because they all deal with human beings and human interaction and how we think and how we behave. But sales and marketing are very two different things. And I've realized that more and more over the last couple of years, when I've been diving heavily into marketing in particular. I've always been selling. My whole life I've been selling, but now I've had to really start to expand and refine my skills as a marketer. And they are two very different things. The way that I simplify it is this. When you sell, you go to the customer, you try and persuade or influence the customer to buy. When you market, you are attracting the customer to you. So instead of selling, they are buying. So it's a very different psychological nuance. When you sell, you're selling. When you market, you are creating an environment for people to come to you to buy. So it's a very different nuance, very different understanding behind a different mindset. And you have to really exercise and execute your strategy in a different way.
Wow. So can you give us an example of the marketing strategy?
Yeah, great. So, I mean, these days, there's no secret that a marketing strategy that works these days is really about giving your target audience information and content that is valuable to them, help them on their journey. If you're giving people content regularly, that allows them to build trust and build your credibility and put you on a pedestal as a thought leader in a way. And then when they're ready, and this is the key point, when they are ready and they trust you, they will come to you and ask to buy or ask buying questions. So it's a very different situation from promoting and selling. You're just giving people free content, getting them to understand how you think, how you work, who you are as a person, as a human, what you're passionate about, allowing you to display your expertise in a certain area. And then when they're convinced and they're ready, they will come to you. And so that's what we do with social media heavily these days, because social media is such a powerful marketing channel, and podcasting as well, because we're always bringing on people on our podcast, giving people information that they can use, telling people a bit more about what we do so they can understand who we are. But we try and limit the selling and try and give information and value more so that they will come to us when they're ready.
Okay, well, so give us the example of two ways. One, how when people sell, what's the way of wording it, and when they market,
Sure.
what's the way of wording it. I think that will help us to identify the two and
I
help us
love
have
your
better
questions.
understanding.
I love it. So for example, if I was going to be selling or promoting on social media, and I do that as well. So, there's not to say that you can only market, because if you only market and you never actually sell or ask for anything, people don't know what the hell you're there for. So you still have to let people know that you're there to make money and you provide a certain service, but you have to try and limit the selling and maximize the marketing. So for example, if I'm going to be selling, I will put on a post to say I'm going to be selling about what I do as a photographer. Great headshots, so much, cost so much. With each headshot, I give you one copy in black and white, one copy in color. They get retouched. The price is so much. Turnaround time is 24 hours. I'm having a June special. That's selling. That's promoting. But if I market, I would say, all right, here are the best ways for anybody to prepare themselves for a headshot session, how to choose your right headshot for you, how to choose the photographer, what to do when you have your headshot. So I'm giving people information and I'm not selling at all. I'm not saying, come and buy from me, come and get my headshots. All I'm doing is saying, if you want to get headshots, this is what you should know, learn, this is what can help you. Choose whichever headshot photographer you like. But in the process, I'm trying to give people my philosophies and my thinking in headshots and in my passion for photography, and letting them know who I am and how I am and how I work with people and my personality and my style, so that maybe they'll think, well, this guy sounds interesting. Let me have a look at his website and I'll have a look at his headshots and see if I like them. And if I do, I'll ring him. See, so it's a very subtle difference in execution.
Wow, that's great. Well, thank you so much for that example. That makes everything very clear.
Yeah.
And we understand a lot better.
Yeah.
No, you mentioned about podcast. So podcast is another way of displaying your work and introduce you to the world and telling the world who you are, what you're about.
Yes.
So since you're a podcast coach, can you give us some tips or take us through? So we have a Pharmacy Entrepreneur TV as well as podcast. What should we watch out for?
Yeah. Okay. Good question. I mean, so to start with, a podcast these days has moved from being just audio to being audio and video, just like you mentioned. You've got both, and so do I. So I like to record my podcast on Zoom, and I have an audio version and I have a video version on YouTube. So very powerful, because video is the latest frontier, and it's going to be here for a little while. So people should get comfortable with video. But in terms of a podcast in general, audio or video, I think what I teach in my podcast course is really, I break it down into three things, and I call them the 3 Ps. The first one is preparation. The second one is production. And the third one is promotion. So in preparation, you really have to make sure you're preparing your guests properly, like you've done with me. You have to prepare yourself properly. You have to prepare the technology. So there's a lot of preparation that goes into having your own podcast, finding guests, scripting things, drafting an episode, coming up with ideas, networking for guests. All these things go into preparation about the topic and the subject of where that person has come from, like you've just done with me. So, that's a big step in the process when you are executing a podcast. Second part is the production of the podcast, and the technology comes into play, the lighting comes into play, the microphone, the sound comes into play, the video quality, all that stuff, as well as the actual app that you use and how you produce that episode. And then the third part, and probably the most important, is the promotion. Because if you don't promote your podcast, nobody knows about it. What's the point? Just like a website, if somebody has the most incredible whiz-bang website, but nobody even knows it exists, you're never going to sell anything. You're never going to promote anything. You're never going to market anything. So you really have, same with the podcast, you have to promote it properly. And that's why I always say that a podcast is really another pillar on your wider content marketing strategy or your wider social media strategy. It's just another piece of content. You know, you can have a podcast for a podcast's sake, which is fantastic. And it is that a great thing. And I love it. But it's also another very important piece of content that you put in front of your target audience regularly in audio and video form. So that's why it's really important to think about those three things: preparation, production, and promotion of your podcast, to make sure that you're executing a podcast that is going to give you the return that you want it to give you with all that energy and time you put in.
Wow. Great. Let's ask a bit more about preparation.
Sure.
So you mentioned content a lot. Yep. So we know content is important.
Yes.
Do you have any tips on how to, in terms of content, how can we make the content so more people wanted to watch or listen to the podcast?
Yeah, good one. Now you're talking about content, just podcast content or content in general?
Oh, let's talk about both.
Okay, awesome.
That was content in general.
All right, perfect. And I'll bring how the podcast fits into that as well.
Okay.
So content in general, really, you know, everybody's on social media, everybody's fighting for content. You know, what we're doing right now is we're creating content. That's the power of what we're doing. We're creating video and audio content. But everybody's in a mad fight to get enough content out there, fresh content to their audience, because that's what they use for their marketing. And content comes in many forms. It comes in audio form, it comes in video form, and it comes in written form. It also comes in graphic form, you know, or screenshots, and you can have fun with that kind of stuff as well. And it comes in long form, short form, and medium-sized form. So, you know, it's really, content can be anything. Content can be just one little quote or a little line of something that I put on LinkedIn or Facebook. It can be a graphic with my philosophy around it. It can be a blog post about how to take better photographs. It can be a podcast about how to put together a great podcast. And that can be in audio and video form. So really, in terms of content, we're all out there creating content. And that's why you hear that word content everywhere. It's become like the buzzword of this century. We're always creating content. We want more content, and we're all collaborating as well to get more content, because collaboration is really an amazing way to get fresh content. And so we're always either putting on our sales or our marketing hat, hopefully our marketing hat, when we're creating content that is going to be useful and give information to our audience. And then we're trying to put that out on all the different platforms where our target audience lives. And that could be Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, LinkedIn, your podcast channel, YouTube, Snapchat, whatever it is, you know. And that's not to mention, that's also goes for traditional media, is also extremely powerful, not just social media. You know, that's also content. They're also looking for content. So in terms of content, really, it's just about being creative. And the more you put content together, the more creative you become. You start to get better at it. You know, when I look back 2 years ago when I first started content, I will say, oh my God, that was terrible. It was so infantile. But, you know, you just got to give it the time, and you take your time, and you learn from other people, and you watch what other people do, and you get ideas, you get inspired, and you start to make more sophisticated content all the time. And, you know, before you know it, you've got a really nice repertoire. And this is another very important point, is you need variety. Because if you're putting the same thing in front of your guest all the time, in front of your audience, they're going to get bored. So one day you do a video, the next day you do an audio, the next day you do a written little piece of content, next day you do a screenshot, or you do a few in a day, but you mix it up. You got to keep your audience on their toes. You got to keep them engaged. Because if I don't keep giving you variety, you're going to get bored. And that's the other reason why podcasting is so amazing, because I have variety every time I bring on a new guest. Every time I interview somebody else, they're not just listening to me, they're listening to my guest. And that is a whole new way of thinking, a whole new psychology, a whole new expertise, a whole new set of tips and tricks and insights for them to learn. So that's valuable content to give your audience, and it's not just you. So that's why podcasting is so powerful as a content marketing tool, because it gives you more fresh, various content to put in front of your audience. So I hope that's kind of made a bit of sense.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
Awesome.
So, and I also have a question with the middle P, I guess the equipment.
Yes.
We have to. Do you have any suggestions for that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, you can. Everybody always asks this, and you can really start a podcast for $200-300 if you really want to start with your technology. I mean, you don't even have to go down this route, but for example, this microphone is a very bottom of the range, run of the mill podcast mic. It's called a Samson, Samson Q2U. It's about $120 on Harvey Norman or overseas or eBay or wherever. And it gives you quality, good, strong enough quality sound. You can have better mics, but it's good enough. And that's another important point, is that when I first started, a good friend of mine who you know as well, Daniel Tolson, big shout out to Daniel. Daniel said to me, there's a whole science behind the study of the voice and how people receive your voice when you're communicating. And a microphone is really important because it picks up the resonance in your voice. So I got off that phone call and I bought myself a mic. I said, Daniel, I'm buying a mic. And so microphone, is really good, important. Otherwise, even the AirPods are really good, or use one of those ones that go across your head with a little mic that comes in front of your mouth. Whatever you have that just gives you a little bit of amplification of your voice. In terms of the video, the camera in your inbuilt camera in your laptop is very good already. But if you want to go that extra mile, you can buy a little external Logitech webcam, and I've got one that's called a C922 Logitech HD webcam, which you can buy for $120. Pop that on your computer screen or on your screen in front of you, and that gives you a little bit of better quality image. And the other thing is lighting. And I've got these two little ring lights. They're called ring lights. So you see how much light dropped off now when I turned that off?
Yeah.
Now I'm going to put it back on. I'm going to show you, you can change the color. You can change the intensity of light. And this is where my photography skill set comes in a little, in that what I did was I bought two little ones and I put them on either side of me so it can be really evenly lit. And that's really makes a big difference, because a lot of times you're really well lit, but a lot of times people are very backlit, like the background can be very well lit, but the front is dark and I can't even see your face. And if I can't see your face, if the audience can't see your face, we can't communicate with you. We can't connect with you. So lighting is important as well. But I mean, all these things are very inexpensive, and you can start small and just build your way and get more sophisticated as you go. And the other thing, obviously, is the technology for your podcast. And there's a really great app that I recommend that's probably the best one. It's called Anchor, Anchor. Okay. And that allows you to, you can record a podcast on your phone. You can record a podcast using the Anchor webpage, and you can produce the podcast with interludes and music and all sorts of fun things, all done nearly for free. It is for free actually, until you start, increasing the grades. And it gives you incredible functionality, and you don't have to have a whole studio and all that kind of thing. You just need a few little tools, and with $200-300, you're up and running.
Wow, that's great. Thank you for the tips.
So
now we're up to the last P.
The last P, yes, the promotion.
Yes. How do you promote your podcast?
You're very good. You're not going to let me get away with anything, are you? All right, awesome. So promoting the podcast is really important. It's just like anything else. So what I do, a little trick that I do, is I want to create as much buzz for a podcast as I can. So I will, every morning, usually, I usually have a podcast about 11 a.m. or sometimes 2 or 3 p.m. And every morning, early morning, I will put out a little promotional trailer saying episode something live at 11 o'clock. Stay tuned. Ali's joining me, et cetera, et cetera. and I have a link to my Facebook page where I usually stream it live. So I want to create some awareness and buzz for the podcast. At the same time, once I've recorded the podcast, I then go and promote that podcast via YouTube and, I take my YouTube link and my audio link and I put that in all my social media posts, both. I put the topic of the podcast. I put links to the guests, contact details and where people can find them. But I also put a little link to my audio podcast and my video podcast, and people can link out. But the interesting thing is, a lot of people generally just watch the podcast on the actual platform itself, and they don't even link out to YouTube or to wherever else, particularly on LinkedIn. People just watch it on LinkedIn, and I get a lot of my greatest exposure just for people watching the podcast on LinkedIn that way. As well as that, every now and again, I'll get testimonials or recommendations from people, and I'll put those in a post and I'll promote the podcast that way. So I'm trying to find every single way I can to keep putting the name of that podcast and the fact that I'm a podcaster out into the world. And then I'll put some posts about my thoughts around podcasting, my philosophies around podcasting, so I'm continually trying to create awareness around podcasting and my podcast brand and site, so people know it's there. And the other thing that's really important is you have to be as consistent and as regular as you can. The more you can do, the more episodes you can do, the better. If you do an episode every 2 months, people are not going to really know about you. If you can do an episode a week, people are going to get to know you. If you can do an episode every day or two, it's even better. So you're creating so much buzz through consistency and through continually marketing that podcast, but trying not to promote it too much in a salesy way. Try and balance it a bit with some content that might be interesting to other people. So people already, the guest is the attraction. So you can give people information about what they're going to learn that's already valuable to them, rather than just saying, here's my podcast, here's my podcast.
Oh, that's great. So that's so valuable, and especially for pharmacist entrepreneurs. We are starting our entrepreneur journey and learning what is marketing, how to promote, and marketing strategies. This is really important advice.
Absolutely.
So give us a little tip. What's your advice for our early career pharmacy entrepreneurs in general? From an ex-pharmacist point of view, and also a social media podcast coach point of view.
Love it. Yep, fantastic. Awesome. Well, one thing I've learned over the years is that, I've done so many different things, but there's a common denominator in everything. And that is how I interact with other human beings. So whatever it is that anybody's doing, remember that customer service and how you make your customer and your audience feel is the most important thing to building trust and building loyalty and building credibility. So whatever it is anybody's doing, whether they're pharmacists or not pharmacists or, entrepreneurs or business people or whatever they do in their life, the key is to really remember that whatever you do is kind of important, but first and foremost, you have to know your customer, get to know your customer, be empathetic to your customer, help your customer with whatever it is they need, and give them incredible service and value. Knock their socks off with who you are and what you're going to do for them, because that's what builds trust and credibility more than anything else. Everybody's competing. We've got so much competition around. Everybody's selling the same thing. Everybody's doing the same thing. What differentiates us from anybody else? A lot of the time, it's how we connect with other people. So that is so important.
Wow. Well, thank you so much, Darren.
Thank you, Ali.
Yeah, well, so thank you so much. If we want to learn more about podcast and social media, digital media strategy, where can we find you?
Sure. Well, anybody can just jump on my website, which is just www.suspendedanimation.com.au, or you can jump on, and from there you'll find all my social channels, But if you jump on LinkedIn, there's a lot of LinkedIn and Facebook, there's a lot of content every day. And you can, but on the website, you'll be able to go to my podcast, my LinkedIn, my Facebook, my Instagram, my everything else. So check out my website. And if you just want to give me a ring, happy to have a chat and, go from there.
Great. Thank you again, Darren, for all the amazing 3 Ps we've remembered. Let's repeat it again. So first P, preparation.
First P, preparation. Second P, production. Third P, promotion.
Great.
Very important components to your podcast strategy.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Darren, again.
Thank you, Ali. It's been a pleasure. Thank you, audience.
Bye.